podcasts are, I mean, obviously they've been around for many, many years, but I still think they're one of the most underutilized and under-leveraged mediums out there because, I mean, the example I like to give is that imagine you could do a webinar. And let's just say you did a webinar where every single day you had 1,000 of your ideal clients attend that webinar for a minimum of 45 to 60 minutes every single day, Monday through Sunday. You'd be like, wow, that's a pretty incredible webinar. It's a pretty incredible marketing initiative. Well, a podcast is that. And it's like, and at the same time, usually when somebody's listening, they're either at the gym or they're in the car, you're catching them at it almost undistracted to some extent, but it's in addition to what they would see, whether it's with digital ads or emails. So you're hitting them in another outlet, right? Another sense, if you will. I think podcasting is amazing, but again, it's one of those things like we were just talking about where I know you've done well over 100 episodes of your podcast. You've been doing it for years. We've been doing ours every single week for 3+ years straight. It didn't start out that way, right? You have to stick with it. Like what it is today and the listenership and the consumption that it generates, it takes time, but you have to build these things. And I've seen a lot of people jump into podcasting and they'll do, I don't know, a handful of episodes and say no one's listening because of course, I mean, there's millions of podcasts out there. I don't know the exact stat, but I read somewhere that it's like if your podcast gets, it's like 100 downloads an episode or something, you're in the top 10% of podcasts, something like that. So most people just don't stick it out.
And think about that, 100 ideal prospects listening to it, even at 100, that's significant, especially if you do a weekly show. And the way the podcast works, it works like a repository. It works like a content library. For example, I know you're an avid podcast listener. Sometimes I'll go to my favorite shows and I see the guests. I'm like, I'm not going to check that one out. And I'll go scroll through the past episodes and I see maybe a Huberman or somebody really exciting. I'll listen to those. And you need time to develop this library so they have optionality.
Yeah. It's also, I think when you talk about leverage, I like things that compound, right? And a podcast is something like that because, when we had just a few episodes, I remember when we first started, you got 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes, but then you start to see, you get to 100 episodes and every day you see that someone's still listening to episode 1 and episode 5 and episode 6. And it's like every single episode we've looked gets at least 1 or 10 or even 100 listens every single day. And when you've got over 160 of them, now you start to see compounding where it's not just the most recent one, right? People jump in at different times. And then to your point, I think every company should, eventually turn into a media company. So you can take this podcast, which is audio, we're also filming it, right? We'll also chop it up into video bits. So sometimes people consume these in short form. Then you also have graphic quote cards. Then you start posting it on different social platforms. So some people will listen to it long form. Some people will watch it. Some people will listen to short form video bits. And others will share it. There's a blog post, there's show notes, all from essentially an hour conversation.
It's the ultimate flywheel.
Yeah.
It continues to power and spin faster because of all the things that you said. It can power an email list. It can power social media. It can short form clips and reels and TikTok and what have you. And it just grows and grows and grows. It is that force multiplier. It's one of the best force multipliers there are right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as saturated. It's more intimate. You have the individual in the ear. It's just exceptional.